meeting now in public session. Can I first of all, before we start, has Jonathan arrived in yet? No, he hasn't. Oh, he's coming in through the door now. So he is. I'll wait until Jonathan takes his seat before I officially mention him, and can just make members aware of Jonathan Bill, who is the Departmental Assembly Liaison Officer, and who will be along at all of the meetings for the future. So welcome, Jonathan. Can I also remind members then of the protocol regarding the use of electronic devices? And I think members know the protocol around that have your phone switched off. It affects our Hansard quality in here, and of course we want to make sure that everybody's voices are picked up on Hansard. Can I also remind those in the public gallery that mobile devices may be used through a Wi-Fi connection, and all devices should be muted. The password details are set out in the gallery rules for anyone wanting to connect to the Assembly Wi-Fi network. 3G and 4G should not be used, and no recordings or photographs are permitted to be taken. So item number 2 on the agenda then is apologies. We don't have any as all members are present, so we'll move straight on to chairperson's business. And the first item on that is committee membership. May I refer members to details of the committee membership, which can be found on page 14 of your packs. Can I also advise members that meetings will be held each week here in the Senate chamber unless you're advised otherwise. In terms of meetings packs, it is proposed that an electronic copy of the pack is emailed to members on a Monday afternoon. Can I ask members, are they content with those arrangements? Great.
Yeah, great.
Okay. And we'll move on to staff contact details. Can I refer members to page 15 of their meeting packs? This sets out contact details for the committee and research staff. I also remind members of the importance of contacting staff if they're unable to attend committee meetings. We don't want to end up where we're going to be not able to have a quorum whenever we have witness sessions and such. I know things can arise early morning before committee, but if members can just show good manners and alert committee staff if they're not going to be present or if they're going to be late. Can I also advise the committee that I have a number of diary commitments that predate my appointment as chair and as arise from my involvement in many of the all-party groups that I sit on. And despite my best efforts, members will be aware that some of these groups might assume that I am there as the chair of this committee. Prior to the election, I had agreed to sponsor quite a few events that will be taking place over the coming months, but they were as a member of the Legislative Assembly, not as chair of this. So I just want to make members aware of that, and I assume that there's not going to be any difficulty with that from anybody. I will be there as a member and not as chair of the committee. So is that okay with everyone? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, can I move on then to declaration of interest procedures? Can I refer members to the clerk's memo on page 17 of the meeting pack on the declaration of interests, and members will know that you're all required to register relevant interests in the register of members, and I would draw your attention to the deadline for registering your interests is Thursday the 9th of June. So if members could get that in sooner rather than later. In addition to this requirement, Standing Order 69(5) states that a member who has a financial interest in any matter or a relevant interest in any matter must declare the interest before taking part in any proceedings of the Assembly relating to that matter. Members should note that proceedings of the Assembly also includes committee meetings, so I'd ask that members declare those interests at either their first meeting or as meetings come up. There will be stuff on the agenda, of course, that members might have a declaration to declare, so I could ask that they do that. So can I ask now, do any members have any declarations they need to declare? I don't think there's anything on.
Chair, could I just ask guidance on my former employment? So obviously the Fire and Rescue Service is going to come up this year to be one of the priorities, I suspect. So I'm no longer an employee, pending my resignation, and that's all through. It's just, is there any legacy issues with having been employed for so long?
There shouldn't be. I know and also I was a former employee of the Health Service,
yeah.
So when we came around to maybe talking about superannuation or things like that, I would have declared an interest in those. You will know as we go along if you want to seek guidance before the meeting on anything. We can certainly do that, or else, as been the clerk in standards and privileges will give you advice on that, so they will as well. There shouldn't be anything that does come up, but just keep yourself right. But I know for me, some of the things I had to, or maybe if you're a member of a certain union and we're discussing union issues or whatever, you'll know yourself. But there will be occasions where we'll maybe start discussing something, and halfway through it you'll go, really, I should have declared. You can come in then as well and say, you know, can I just declare an interest, just to keep everything above board. Is that okay?
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Okay, can I also remind members that the rules governing the registration and declaration of interests are contained in the Code of Conduct and Guide to the Rules relating to the Code of Members, and that further advice and guidance is available from the Clerk of Standards in room 243 here in Parliament Buildings. Okay, members, everybody okay with that? And move on then to procedures. If we move on to item 5, can I draw members' attention to the number of procedural documents providing information on a range of issues relevant to the role and remit of this Health Committee. The documents can be found on page 20 to 52 of your meeting pack. The guidance documents at pages 20 to 29 provide practical information on the powers, responsibilities and operations of a statutory committee. As members will be aware, committees should have 11 members with a required quorum of 5 for taking any decisions, or 4 for other business, for example, an evidence session. Could I ask now that the clerk speak to the guidance on privilege and matters of subjudice?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, this is all contained in more detail in your guidance document, but it's of such importance that it's felt worthwhile just to draw some things to your attention in relation to subjudice and privilege. So under Section 50 of the Northern Ireland Act 1998, for the purposes of the law of defamation, absolute privilege applies equally to the making of a statement in proceedings of the Assembly and the publication of a statement under the Assembly's authority. So that privilege extends to meetings of this committee. Members should note, however, that privilege does not extend to press conferences or your own press statements issued outside of this meeting. So you're only protected during formal meetings of the committee, and once you leave the room and go and speak to the press or repeat what you said in the committee, that is not, you are not covered. Subjudice falls under Standing Order 73 of the Assembly, and it applies from the moment when a criminal charge or charges are brought, or from when a notice of appeal is lodged, to the time that the verdict and sentence have been announced, or in respect of a civil action from the point when it's listed for trial until judgment is given. In such cases, the matter awaiting adjudication should not be prejudiced by comment in a public session of a committee meeting. In practice, the committee would seek legal advice if it was dealing with an issue where we thought subjudice might be relevant. So I would encourage members to look further at the guidance for more detail on those matters. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Alice. Okay, members, happy enough with that. If we move on then to the document at page 30 to 34, that provides guidance on the role of a committee chairperson as outlined in Assembly Standing Orders, and then on to page 35-36 is guidance on the role of the committee office and information on its structure, responsibilities and procedures. And then we also have guidance at page 37 to 46, which gives information on Assembly research services to committees. This guidance is primarily for clerks and researchers. However, it is recommended that committee members have sight of this. At pages 47 to 52, there's guidance regarding the timescales for interaction between committees and departments. So can I ask members, are they content to note this guidance?
Noted.
Okay, thank you. Move on to item number 6, which is first aid brief. And can I refer members to the first aid brief at page 53 of the pack, which is being prepared by the department and outlines the main responsibilities of the department's arm-length bodies. Are members content to note the briefing paper as background information for forthcoming briefings? Members content, thank you. Item number 7 is the legacy report. Can I refer members to the legacy report prepared by the previous committee? That's on pages 68 to 86. The report identifies a number of issues that the incoming committee may wish to consider. Are members content to note for the meantime and consider further once we have received briefings from officials and others? So we will come back to that.
Great.
Great, thank you. Okay, item number 8 is the Forward Work Programme. Can I advise members that a weekly agenda for committee meetings will be prepared by the clerk and agreed by myself. The agenda will be based on the Forward Work Programme agreed by the committee. A draft Forward Work Programme will be brought to the committee for consideration at next week's meeting. I've asked committee staff to provisionally schedule a number of briefings to take place before summer recess. This will include briefings with the new Minister, the Permanent Secretary, senior departmental officials and other senior office holders within the department and its arm's length bodies. Our members to content to invite the Minister to brief the committee on her priorities for the department, including relevant aspects of the programme for government. Next week I would expect that the committee will be briefed by the department on the June monitoring round, the deadline for which will have passed on the 6th of June. Unfortunately, officials were not in a position to brief us today on that. Our members content to invite senior officials to brief the committee on the main business areas within the department. Agreed?
Agreed.
You want to come in, Jerry?
Yeah, sure, thanks. I mean, just to put on the radar, more for the Minister, there's a number of issues I would sort of like to raise. And the clerks, I was talking to the clerks beforehand, and they said they're just notified to put on the radar. And the first issue is the loss of mental health and learning disability centres, which is a real concern for people across Belfast and across the region. And I've been active in the campaign and been contacted by people about that. So I would like to put that on the radar for when the Minister is coming in, and also the issue of living wage. Maybe it's more of an issue for strategic planning. But it was something that I would like to be put on the agenda for discussion in the committee, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. I know from the mental health and learning disability, and we'd spoken earlier about this, I've been involved with that also in my own area in North Belfast. So yeah, and I think that is good practice as well, that if anybody wants to forward anything to the clerk for whenever the Minister comes in to do our briefing, or indeed the department, I think it's good practice that we give them a little bit of notice in order for them to be able to come back with a full and detailed explanation. So that's been noted. Paula?
Jerry, I was just wondering, is there any chance we could even invite Professor Bengoa to get an update on where they are with the social health and social care reform process? I know that you maybe got a briefing before the last Assembly term, but obviously for the new people, it'd be actually very beneficial.
Okay, no, I would agree with that as well. I actually had, as part of my role in the last mandate, I attended one of their meetings. I think you were there also.
Sure, I was there. I would
So,
concur with that. I
yeah.
think it's went very, very quiet, and given the fact the other one was just a few weeks before the election, I think June was the deadline, but we're into June, so I think if we could get that as soon as possible, it'd be very
Okay,
useful too.
so we'll add that then to our list of people. Barry?
Chair, just in relation to the Minister's presentation, there's one item I would like, and I know other members would like to be on the agenda. It would be a report into the underfunding of adult learning disability services in the Western Health Trust area. RQIA, I think, have come on something major here since 1996. There has been multi-million pounds of underfunding of adult learning disability services, and is causing great upset among adult carers of adult learning disabled people. Massive issue, and it could get really big, this one.
I know that we're going to have several issues that we'll want the Minister to discuss, but we also want to hear the Minister's priorities as well, and you know what her plans are also. So some of this stuff will be part of future that we will look at.
The reason I said that, and it is mindful that you don't bring every issue to this table, but this is a developing situation. Yeah. This is very, very current, and nobody can get the facts. Nobody can get the facts as to the amount of underfunding. £8 million is quoted every week. Is that every year? Is that since 1996? There's a real issue at the core of this.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Barry. Anybody else want to bring, Dorothy?
Just, turn into a bit of a shopping list, this, but no, another current issue is the gay blood ban, and there's been some commentary in the media about this, so I think that's something that the committee should look at, and certainly something I would wish to raise with the Minister when she attends. And there's a number of other health issues, obviously, in regard to the LGBT community that we should pursue as well. So.
Okay, well, I think, I mean, if you think of anything even after committee, I think if you let the clerk know, and I think if the Minister has as much information as possible of members' concerns, I think it's helpful for this committee, it's helpful for her, but it's also helpful for us in this committee. Joanne?
Chair, did you say the Minister's up the week after next then?
We haven't been given a definite date as yet. We're going to be writing today to ask.
So given the time, we still have just time to prepare, and
Yeah.
senior officials as well. And you just touched on, I know we referred to in closed session, the legacy report.
Yeah.
I'm very, very concerned about waiting times and the fact that we did an important piece of work in the previous committee and the department are still considering it. It would be useful. I'm very concerned that those important pieces of work don't just sort of disappear. And
Well, that's something then we can send even on to them when we ask for the department to come up as well.
Yes. So if the Minister was prepared for that and our senior officials that are with her, I would like to know what has been done on those and how long do they consider. You know, people are waiting and waiting and waiting, and I think it's important that we get answers to that as well. So it'll be an extensive list.
Okay, anything else, anybody? Mark? I know this now become our
all
shopping
of
list.
the above, all hugely
Yeah.
important issues and ones I look forward to working with my new colleagues on this committee on. Another one, just in terms of topicality, and I did mention it in closed session, was the Spotlight programme and the shocking revelations in that. I do think we need a representative from the department to come here just to answer some questions on it. There are an awful lot of questions. It's very disturbing, to be quite frank, given that children seem to have literally disappeared, particularly when we're in a context, I suppose, when more children from foreign shores are going to be arriving here as well. We need to ensure their safety first and foremost. So I think it's very important we get someone in on that.
And I think some of these matters, some are more topical at the moment and some will take priority, and I think we need to be just very careful with our session that we do have at the Minister, that it is focused. And I think that is something.
For the Minister.
Yeah. So I think even whether it's with department officials or whether it's with the Minister or whoever it is that will be coming in the coming weeks, we may not be able to get through a full list of what everybody wants. I could rattle off 20 things that were to do with all party groups I've sat in over the past 5 years, but therefore our strategic planning day in September we'll start to look at that. But there are some things that do need immediate answers to as well. So I finish there and just ask, are the members content then that we write to the Minister and the departments, or the department rather, to come in and speak to us and give us a briefing? Agreed? Yeah?
Great.
Okay. Are members also content to invite the research service to provide a briefing on budgetary process ahead of the briefing on the monitoring round next week? Are members agreed with that?
Great.
Okay. And can I also encourage members to inform the clerk of any particular issues? I said it earlier, and you've already informed the clerk of many particular issues, but if there is anything else that should come up between now and the department or the Minister being in, as I say, I think it's good practice that the department or the Minister are made aware. I know there will be things that will come up during the course of the discussion, and we can't help that will happen. Mark?
Just one more on that, and we have seen in recent years more in terms of north-south collaboration, in terms of delivering healthcare. There are huge benefits associated with that, not just in terms of care, but also in terms of finance and the savings that can be made or realised through that. I wonder would it be possible to get something from the Minister, I guess, on the potential implications for such collaborative projects of Brexit.
Okay. That's fine.
I thought there was something around the European stuff. We weren't actually allowed to broach that now until after Brexit. So I thought we had to stay away from European matters.
Well, we can get that clarified. So we can find that out. I don't know myself, can't answer that, but we'll find that out for the next meeting. That's fine. Okay, members, we move on then to item number 9, subordinate legislation, delegation of technical scrutiny to the examiner statutory rules. Can I ask again if the clerk would brief the committee regarding committee consideration of subordinate legislation, and that's on page 89 to 91 of your meeting packs.
Thank you, Chair. Members will be aware that scrutiny of subordinate legislation is an important duty facing the committee. And so I'm just drawing to your attention the highlights of that guidance document, but I would encourage you to see the document for the full detail. In general terms, primary legislation sets out the framework of government policy in terms of main powers, duties, offences, for example, whereas subordinate legislation flowing from the Parent Act fills in the detail. For example, it might set out the detailed administrative or legal proceedings around an administrative process, or, for example, the process for applying for something, a licensing application or licensing system, for example. Subordinate legislation can only be made under a power given in a primary piece of legislation. It usually comes in the form of regulations, orders, or bylaws, and a little confusingly, these are sometimes collectively referred to as statutory rules. So there's a number of terminology barriers there that sometimes can get in people's way of understanding it. It's worth mentioning that whereas a lot of subordinate legislation might well be routine, for example, raising the level of fees or penalties for a minor offence, others may be highly significant. And you'll be aware of discussion in the media around forthcoming regulations that could be highly significant in terms of implementation of government policy. So the committee's main roles then are policy scrutiny and reporting to the Assembly on technical scrutiny. So in terms of policy scrutiny, the Department is required to inform and consult the committee about any proposals for making statutory rules. It does this by providing the committee with a memo on the policy objectives known as an SL1. So the key role for the committee is at this SL1 stage. This is the moment when the committee can consider whether it's content with the policy that will be brought in by the new statutory rule when it's drafted, and at that point the committee could decide to take evidence, for example, and try to influence or change that policy as it has come to the committee. And this is the only chance the committee has to influence or change the policy. Once the committee has approved the SL1, the department then makes the statutory rule, and it's laid in the business office, who forward it to the committee then for a formal decision on the rule. And it's important to be aware that once you get the statutory rule, the committee does not have the opportunity to amend that. So whereas the committee has conducted a policy scrutiny on the SL1, when it comes to the technical scrutiny of the statutory rule itself, when it comes to you, for example, whether it has been drafted properly, whether there's any competence issue arising, the practice is for the committee to delegate that task to the Assembly's examiner of statutory rules. The guidance sets out further examples of the kind of technical matters that the examiner might look at. Angela Kelly is the current examiner, and she will produce a report back to the committee on all statutory rules, pointing out any technical issues with them. And in a moment, therefore, the chair will be seeking the committee's agreement to delegate your technical scrutiny formally. Once the committee has concluded its scrutiny, it reports back to the business office. And although the Assembly cannot amend subordinate legislation, it can, in most cases, approve it or vote it down. And there are 4 types of what are called Assembly controls, which are listed in the Primary Act, and indicate the level of control or influence or voting options that the Assembly would have. They're set out in more detail in the guidance, but roughly speaking, or to summarise, a rule subject to negative resolution will specify at the top the date on which that rule comes into operation. It's usually 21 days after being laid in the business office. And although it can take effect without approval, it can be annulled by the Assembly on a motion within 30 calendar days or 10 sitting days of the coming into operation date, whichever is longer. And this is known as the statutory period. There are 2 statutory rules in today's pack, for example, which are subject to this procedure and may be annulled by a motion in the Assembly on or before the 27th of June. This negative resolution procedure is usually used for fairly minor matters, for example, fees or uncontroversial administrative procedures. The other 3 procedures are affirmative resolution, confirmatory resolution, and draft statutory rules, otherwise known as the draft affirmative procedure. And I think, Chair, suffice it to say we can leave members to have a look at the detail and come to me if you have any questions about those.
Okay, members. And as Irish said, I need to formally put this to the committee. So can I just say that the Committee for Health, Social Services and Public Safety, under Standing Order 43, resolves to delegate to the Examiner of Statutory Rules the technical scrutiny of statutory rules referred to the committee under the above-mentioned standing order. The committee further resolves that in carrying out this function, the examiner shall be authorised to report her technical findings on each statutory rule to the Assembly and the relevant department, as well as to the committee itself, and to publish her report. Are members agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you, members. Okay, if we could then move on to our items 10 and 11. The next two agenda items are statutory rules for consideration by the committee. The papers are at pages 93 to 123 of the meeting pack. The previous Health Committee agreed that it was content with the policy behind both rules. However, it was unable to complete its scrutiny as the rules were not formally laid by the department until after the last meeting before dissolution. Given that this may be the first opportunity for the members of this committee to have sight of these statutory rules, it may be more appropriate to defer making any decision on these rules until next week's meetings. Are members content to defer making the decision on the statutory rules until next week?
Yes,
Agreed. Right.
Thanks, Chair. Agreed. A few questions on this point. Would it be best to ask those next week, or best to ask them now, or what's the sort of procedure?
It's up to yourself, or if you want to speak to the, if it's to do, is it to do specifically with statutory rules?
It's to do with the Pharmaceutical Society.
No, we'll bring that up again.
It'll come in.
Yeah, it's just I've decided we should defer it because it's the first time people have got to have a look at it.
Will they be coming in next week?
It may not necessarily unless
They're on the they're potentially on the agenda for next week, subject to members' agreement. Yes.
Yeah, is that okay?
Yeah,
Gary?
that's okay.
Okay. Okay, can I turn members to item number 12, which is correspondence? Can I refer members to the 4 items included in pages 125 to 130 of the meeting pack? Item 12.1 at page 125 is a cover note from the Assembly Business Office accompanying the Future of Pharmacy Regulations consultation. The consultation period ends on the 14th of June 2016. Item 12.2 at page 126 is from the Health and Social Care Trust regarding a consultation and EQIA on the development of ophthalmic clinical centres in North, South and South East Trust areas. The consultation period ends on the 5th of August 2015. Are members content to note these items of correspondence? Great.
Great.
Okay, thank you. Item 12.3 at page 127 is from Declan McAleer, MLA, regarding treatment for cystic fibrosis. Are members content to forward this to the National Institute of Clinical and Health Excellence for further information? Great. Okay, members, thank you. Item 12.4 at page 130 is the cover page of the e-health and care strategy for Northern Ireland. This report was received by the committee office over the period of PERDA and will be held in the office for a period of time if members wish to see a copy. Are members therefore content to note the correspondence? Great, thank you.
Chair, just in terms of the correspondence from Mr McAleer regarding a constituent with cystic fibrosis, there does seem to be a time pressure there in terms of the final guidance being issued in July, so it may be worth a member raising with the Minister when she's here as well, so that could be noted just for that particular meeting.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, we move on to item number 13, members, and that's any other business. Can I ask members, do they have any other business that's relevant? Nope, that's good. Item number 14 is date, time and place of next meeting. The next meeting will take place at 10:30 a.m. on Thursday the 9th of June here in the Senate chamber. Thank you, members.